would have thought that I would be back doing this again, talking about spoilers and leaks? Well, not exactly. If you didn't know, we have been anticipating a very anticipated fan data book that is supposed to be coming out soon. And as of the recording of this video, it should have come out today in Japan. So in this video, I'm gonna go over some very cool and fun information that you won't be able to know for a while until the book has been translated into English. And there's a lot of new information that we learn about, from the students of Class 1A to the villains and what they like and dislike. Even some major reveals about Deku, All Might, and the previous users of One for All and All for One. All of that and more is going to be discussed in this video, so stay tuned because I'll be diving right into it. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to cover the information that has been released and revealed about My Hero Academia Ultra Age book. And yeah, for those who do not know, this is a relatively recent book that has been released by Horikoshi this year today. And this book is based off and referencing other types of books that gave us a lot of information about the characters in the world of My Hero Academia. And the book that we have right now is actually the third installment of this series, where this is the Ultra Analysis reference book, which is the previous book before Ultra Age. This book conveyed information about both heroes, students, as well as the villains. As well as this is a book in celebration of the ending of My Hero Academia, which are going to be answering a whole bunch of questions and delivering a whole lot of information that we didn't necessarily get at the ending of My Hero Academia proper. So there's a lot that we're going to go over, including a one-shot manga that is actually added to this book. So with all the preamble behind, let's just dive right into it and really talk about what's in the book and what to expect. And for starters, like I said, this has not been officially translated into English, so all of the information that I'm providing you is based off people that I've gained information from who was able to access the book because they are in Japan or they have those connections. And a lot of this information you could find on other platforms, but I'm going to at least consolidate it into one video so that you don't have to necessarily go out to multiple sources to find this information. Also, I think it's better to gather information from watching a video than just reading it online. And with that out the way, I want to go into some more smaller tidbits of information that we got before I get into the big, hard-hitting questions that were answered in the book. For starters, let's go over some pieces of information when it comes to the named characters in the series of My Hero Academia, or should I say lack thereof. For instance, we finally got the full names of the second user and third user of One for All, which we get as Toshi Tutsuga Kudo and Bruce Lee, who are the names of the second and third users respectively. Also, what's very interesting about these names is how Kudo's first name, I assume, which has the same kanji or maybe name recognition as Toshinori Yagi, also known as All Might, through the Toshi part, which is very interesting because we also get revealed potentially of All Might's mother also having that Toshi prefix, Toshie Yagi, which is most likely All Might's mom's name. So that is some interesting information. Also, forgot to bring up, this is what the Ultra Age book cover looks like. It looks amazing. Deku is in his full decked out suit, as well as potentially some information that we actually learn about the suit itself is how it's able to be used and kind of mimics the quirks of One for All that Deku had. So that's a cool piece of information, and I'm glad that the actual art looks amazing. But speaking of One for All, let's talk about All for One, to which we get his name revealed to be Zen Shigaraki, and how Zen means all, so his name is All Shigaraki, which it's fun to know that All for One's actual name was All, so us calling him All for One was very apt. But also, we finally know his first name! So yeah, that's some very great information that we learned, and we also get a little bit more smaller tidbits of information, such as the top 3 chapters, as well as Horikoshi's favorite volume illustration, or just illustration in general. To which the top 3 chapters were actually some of the more relatively recent chapters of My Hero Academia, which includes the end of an era and a young woman's declaration, and Deku versus Class A, which all are great chapters in their own right. as well as Horikoshi saying that he does not necessarily have a favorite character, but that he does like drawing Tokoyami scenes and that they always felt different. And that how Deku and Bakugo were always the trickiest characters to draw, especially Bakugo, and how he always had to find the right balance. So it's cool that we're also getting a little bit more insight into Horikoshi and his likes and dislikes of the series, but we do have a few other smaller informations before we get into the entire section where I'm going to be reading off and showing the answers to questions that Horikoshi has answered that probably some My Hero fans would really both enjoy and hate that these are the questions that were asked. So to go through them, we learned that Deku is still very much a teacher and a pro hero, but that he actually teaches history and hero history, which makes sense with his knowledge and him able to retain all of this information. So it makes sense that he would be a history teacher. But also, ironically enough, he's also taking up the position that was once held by Midnight, if I recall correctly. So not only is he carrying on the tradition of pro heroes becoming teachers, but he actually took on the position of a teacher who fell during the battles years prior. So that's a cool moment that I liked was being answered in the Ultra Age book. And a few other pieces of information that may or may not be questions that we'll read later on. But we also learned that Spinner's book was controversial, but some people considered it crucial information to the understanding of what led to the war. We also get some tidbits of information about the USA's #1 hero being called Agate Minoru, and how she apparently has a quirk called discrepancy, which, that may be a powerful quirk, we just don't know. So, one more thing that I forgot to bring up, but I technically brought it up at the end of the video, but thought that it was so important that I need to bring it up now. It was also revealed in the Ultra Age fan book that Tomoe Shigaraki's quirk, or Tenko Chimura's quirk, was actually revealed technically in the manga proper, and it's actually that ring thing that both All For One, or should I say Zen Shigaraki, as well as Tomoe Shigaraki, used in both of their respective fights towards the end of the series that rocketed them forward. So that's an interesting and neat detail that was released in the fan book, which could have been appreciated if revealed in the main continuity of My Hero Academia. However, it being revealed there doesn't really change anything of any substantial weight. So I'm glad that it was revealed here in the fan book and was just revealed all together. But yeah, back to the original video. And that's pretty much all of the tidbit information that I really want to go over, but there is also something cool that I want to talk about and discuss before we get to the questions. And that is Eri, which is what the one shot that was predicted as well as leaked was going to be in this data book / Ultra Age book. And what's very interesting about this one shot, and I'll just go over it shortly, is the confirmation that Eri is most likely not a student at UA due to the fact that she's wearing a uniform that is distinct from UA, which makes sense because she wasn't someone that wants to be a hero in the professional sense, but due to the influence that Deku, Mirio, Jiraiya, and all of the other students had upon her, she wants to go more into music and make people smile that way. As we see that she's carrying a guitar on her back, as well as the implication is that she's visiting UA instead of just going there, and how she was actually looking for Deku at the time. And this is where we get some very interesting information. But we also get to learn that All Might is also the vice principal of UA, which is cool because it's showing how much he has grown as a character, as well as just showing how much he wants to be more of a mentor and role model than to constantly going out and fighting. And how they have this conversation between Eri and the rest of them about how she's performing her first street concert, and how she wanted to invite Deku and a lot of people to actually see the concert, but then she also came to a realization that most likely than not, Deku, as well as Jiro, who she also invited and who has mostly been teaching her how to play guitar, would actually take away from her performance. But she also came to a realization that she does not want her fame to be built upon the reputation and the influence of Deku and even Mirio. And let me just say that this entire section is just great because I just really like how Eri looks in this chapter. She's a little bit more mature, most likely in high school. She looks beautiful. And it's just very much grown into her own person and into her own personality. She's not just a cute little girl, but she's a well fleshed out, developed younger woman, sort of kinda, who has her own thoughts and her own feelings and wants to do things her own way. But what's even more impactful about the scene is how she's being used in this moment to convey even more information about what's going on with Deku, as well as the people that she looks up to the most. As Cementos, with his funky hair, points over to a screen where we actually get to see one of the news ladies that we saw at the end of My Hero Academia reporting on what was going on and supporting them from afar, how she's more feminine looking and is actually within the studio discussing how it's been half a year since like the previous popularity poll, and that now that Deku is coming into his own as a hero and was the person who inspired a lot of people to be a little bit more heroic and just be heroic in general, that with his return he has actually made it to the number 4 spot. As well as we get the reveal of his hero name and a good look at his new costume, which is that he's named One for All Hero Deku, which that name on its own has so much meaning and so much importance and impact to the story. The reveal of One for All to the entire world, showing that he's not keeping it a secret from anyone, the embracing of the Deku name as being a part of him, as well as saying do your best, as well as just the name One for All Hero Deku just fits into like the idea of like everyone working together as a hero to do their best. So I think that's probably the perfect name befitting of Deku, as we see Eri looking upon with a smile, as well as we get confirmation that Bakugo has regained his position and achieved number 5 on the Billboard charts, showing that Deku is still slightly above Bakugo, but Shoto is still mostly number 2, Mount Lady is number 3, and Mirio is still number 1, giving us the final top 5 ranking in the world of My Hero Academia. And this chapter ends with Deku smiling and Eri saying that she is also going to give it her all, or most likely do her best. As well as we have it afterwards that you can read right here, but I won't go through all of it, but it's just a little bit of Horikoshi just conveying like he didn't think that he was going to do this, but that he just wanted to put a little bit more information into the final fan book, and most likely than not, he just wanted to draw Eri being happy playing guitar. So yeah, I'm glad that Horikoshi was able to add this to the fan data book, just really adding and making the ending of My Hero Academia even better. Also, kind of showing that My Hero Academia still technically hasn't ended, which is why I'm here recording this video. But with that, let's go into probably the most dense part of this video, Q&A section. And I have about 25 to 30 questions that I have to go through, so I'm going to try to go through them as quickly and as effectively as possible, but I might focus on more questions than others because of their relevance and importance. Alright, so let's dive into the questions, starting with question 1. How does the armor that Deku received from Class 1A function? And this was something that I brought up earlier. And Horikoshi responds with, it tries to mimic various one-for-all abilities. For example, it has a cable extension like the function like his ability Black Whip. It also serves as a prototype where he can try and combine various abilities. So that's something that we kind of knew ahead of time, where Deku was able to like convey or like use the suit in ways that are very akin to quirks, and that this one is specifically modeled after the one for all abilities. And we do have an image from the one shot of Eri like looking at Deku literally using like something synonymous with Black Whip, so that's cool. I'm glad that we got that information, and the questionnaire is starting off really strong. And going into a more sillier question, we have, did Bakugo make it into the high tax paying hero ranking? And Horikoshi basically responds with, yeah, but he's not in first place, but he's definitely on the chart. So that's also something fun. He is making a fair amount of money as a hero, which to be expected from the number 5 hero. And here's something else that's interesting. Question: did Bakugo ever get All Might to sign his hero card? And Horikoshi responds with, yes, he did. Usually All Might also adds a little mark on his signature, but Bakugo asked him to not add it out of respect, since he cherishes the armor he received after the All for One battle. So that's very interesting. And we do have another like piece of information adding to that about how, as you can see, how All Might usually draws like his face, but that he also doesn't want it to be representative of All Might necessarily in his prime, but the last moment that he remembered All Might basically being a hero to him. So that's really just showing Bakugo's character in a nutshell. Now, going from Bakugo to Shoto, and relatively speaking, I'll try to cover, and we do cover, at least one question from every student in Class 1A and most of the League of Villain members. Shoto's question is, as an adult, is Todoroki, Shoto, still kind of clueless with social cues? And Horikoshi responds with, it feels wrong to put it like that, but he takes what people say quite literally, whether it's good or bad, and that part of him hasn't changed. So, glad that we're not changing a core part of Shoto Todoroki, so I love that. The next question is probably the one that is the most controversial, which is, did Ochako finally confess her feelings to Deku? Which Horikoshi says, please read Manga Volume 42 and use your own imagination for that answer. While yes, that isn't a straightforward answer, it very much alludes to the fact that yes, what we saw in the manga with most likely the final volumes of My Hero Academia, as well as the extra volume, that she did convey her feelings to Deku, and that you can just imagine how that went about, but most likely she definitely did that. Now, would it have been better if he said it out loud so that the shipping words could definitively end? Yes, but let's be honest, even if he did confirm it, but let's be real, even if he said absolutely she confessed her feelings, people still wouldn't believe him. But going on to the next character, Ida. What degree is Ida's eyesight? He doesn't wear glasses when wearing the hero suit, so does he use contacts instead? Now, this is a cool bit of information because it says that his eyesight is negative 0.8, which means that he wears like glasses, but when he's wearing his costume, his helmet has built-in prescription lenses. So that's a very cool and neat aspect of his hero costume, because it makes sense that it would be built into his costume instead of him just wearing glasses the entire time. And going from Ida to Froppy, something interesting is that Tsuyu's room is said to have a bit of quote-unquote ethnic vibes. What kind of decorations does she have? And Horikoshi responds with like, I wouldn't call it ethnic per se, but she has a lot of plants and moss, kind of like a paludarium. So this is very much a Japanese question. It's translated in English, but this was very definitely written in Japanese because no English speaker would use ethnic vibes. But yeah, he's just saying like, nah, I wouldn't call it like that. It's just a room filled with like plants and stuff. So that makes sense for Froppy, who is like, you know, a frog. But now we get to something even interesting, which is, does Class A students know about Kirishima's high school debut? And Horikoshi responds with, yes, they do. He actually talked about it after the second battle in the final war arc. He even openly talks about it with the media after going pro as well. It's briefly touched upon in chapter 430. Which makes sense for Kirishima. This is something that he's been trying to keep to himself for the entire time, but once he's opened up fully to both Ashido and everyone else, he's more comfortable with doing it, especially being a pro hero, and most likely recognizes that there are people like him who had that same mindset as a kid, so he's acting as a sort of inspiration for them. And even more canon pro hero stuff involving Kirishima's lore, since going pro, he gained an incredibly popular among guys, most likely shonen aged children, and his yearly manly calendar sells out instantly. So yeah, it's very funny that the manliest man with the very much non-toxic masculinity is able to appeal to men. Yeah, I really like Kirishima. This is a very great question. I love it. But going to Momo, which is a little bit disappointing, what is Yaoyorozu's favorite brand of tea? And Horikoshi says that it enjoys Makibari tea. I'm gonna be honest, don't really know what type of tea it is. Even I looked it up, but you know what? If that tea makes Momo happy, then I'm all for it. But going into Chiro, even though Jiro is a pro hero, does she still pursue music? And Horikoshi responds with, yes, she does. When she's not doing pro hero work, she finds time to do music related work. It seems like she even teaches Eri guitar or bass when she has time on her off days. So it just shows how much Jiro has built a connection with Eri, because Eri wants to pursue music, and you know, Jiro was kind of responsible for her wanting to be a musician. So it's cool that she's able to be both a pro hero as well as living out her dream of loving and playing music. So I love that for her. And another interesting question is that in the last chapter, Shinzo has long hair. Did he grow it out because he looks up to Aizawa? And Horikoshi responds with, yes, it's out of respect for Aizawa. Actually, in volume 34, I wanted to show his long hair already, but the pose I drew had him upside down, so it was unclear. And that is most likely referring to the scene where we get first reintroduced to Shinzo trading with his capture scarf as he's hanging upside down like Spider-Man. So he most likely could have had long hair then, but it was hard to tell. And now we're getting into something that is just extremely adorable, which is, has Dark Shadow always been with Tokoyami since he was a child? And Horikoshi responds with, they're always been together. When he was younger, he had to keep the light slightly on to not rile up Dark Shadow. He would apologize to Dark Shadow by saying good night, sorry it's kinda bright, and Dark Shadow would respond with good night, no worries. Aww, that's actually so adorable. Aw man, and like we already knew that they had this type of connection through like the small flashback where Mineta tried to prevent All For One from taking Dark Shadow from Tokoyami, but this just really adds to that a little bit more. It makes it even more adorable. And speaking of adorable, another question aimed at Shoji is that did Shoji ever follow up with the girl he saved in volume 37? Now this is probably one of the longer responses, but Horikoshi responds with, I actually wanted to write about that in the bonus section, but forgot about it. Aww. But basically the girl realized Shoji was attending UA when she saw the sports festival in their first year. However, she didn't contact him since she didn't want to bring up the difficult past since he was doing his best and looking forward instead of dwelling on the past things. After the first battle in the final war, she did send a letter of thanks to Shoji saying, Shoji-kun, I'm doing well, as well as a picture of herself too. Oh, that would have been so amazing to see that in the main continuity of My Hero Academia. But I'm glad that even after all of that, Horikoshi has always been thinking about Shoji and his character, which is great because I have grown to love Shoji even more. And now we're approaching Hakakure, which is a little bit more interesting as well as divisive in my opinion. Because the question is, Hakakure seemed to bug out and have her quirk turn on and off randomly. But has she gotten a better hold of it now 8 years later? And the response that Horikoshi gives is that since it's a defect in her quirk, she still can't toggle it on or off. Because of that bug, it would be bad if she got caught naked, so a special suit has made for her just in case her quirk bugged out again. Her bug didn't appear for a while until 8 years later when she was on a mission with her sidekick Aoyama. Her quirk bugged out and her appearance was revealed for the first time ever on camera. That definitely allowed her to shoot up in the Pro Hero rankings. So this kind of confirms that due to some sort of whatever mechanic, she does what we assume to have a suit that covers up her body, but most likely not her face. Which implies that they were able to, in one way or another, create a suit that is probably going to be constantly invisible because we get confirmation that she can't turn it on and off. And if she can't turn it on and off, that means that she can't have a suit that can respond to being turned on and off. So yeah, it kind of shows that she didn't necessarily need to be naked the entire time in the world of My Hero Academia. However, by the fact that she was always naked and no one could see her, there was no need or rush to actually create a suit for her. So it's cool that we finally got that information and finally squashed this argument about Hakakure, most likely than not. And I would like to have jumped immediately to Aoyama, but we do have a few smaller questions, such as with Koda, and someone asks, what is Koda's favorite animal? And he responds with bunnies. But he's somehow scared of Mirko, which is hilarious and yet understandable. I understand it. I am also scared of Mirko, but more specifically, what she will be doing with me between those two thick thumbs. Next question. In the graduation montage, Bakugo and Monoma are seen in an explosion together. Did they become friends? And Horikoshi responds with, Monoma did try to get closer to Bakugo. I mean, Bakugo kind of died in front of his very eyes, so he was probably worried about him. And I love that towards the end of the series, Monoma became friends with Bakugo because he saw him basically died, which is very poetic justice-like because he was so much against Bakugo during the sports festival, and they eventually became friends. Also, similar personalities and whatnot. But we couldn't mention Aoyama without mentioning Kendo with the question of, did Kendo ever attend the beauty pageant as a third year, and if so, what did she rank? And Horikoshi responded with, well, Monoma was the one who randomly signed her up in first year, so she did not participate in the beauty pageant at all after that. So dang, it's a shame that she was unable to go up against Momo in the beauty pageant for her second and third years. But still, she did fairly well. And speaking of the beauty pageant, the next question is about Tamaki. And the question is, has Tamaki ever held back from eating something for the purpose of his quirk? And the long answer is what Horikoshi gives, but the short answer is nope. As a kid, he did dislike some foods like others do, but it was overcome with the excitement to be able to use it for his quirk. He's the same now too. He'd eat anything if he's interested in it. And frankly, this makes me like Tamaki a lot. Because I'm the type of person that would try to taste things at least once in his life or try something at least once, so I'm glad that Tamaki has a similar mindset. And now we're getting to a power scaling moment, which is a question about All Might and what is the fastest speed in kilometers All Might has ever ran. And Horikoshi responds with Mach 10 levels of speed. That's 12,348 kilometers per hour. That's pretty fast. Obviously not as fast as the speed of light, but this is him running. This doesn't include him like traveling far distance with pseudo flight or even how hard he hits. That's just how fast he runs. And he could probably kick even harder or even faster or even punch even faster with combat speed versus distance speed, but I'm not going to get into power scaling. I'm going to let your power scalers do that. And while this isn't a power scaling question, we do have a question about Hawks and asking from someone, does Hawks still have the precious Endeavor plushie and does he own any other Endeavor merch? And Horikoshi responds with, he doesn't display it, but it's probably somewhere in his house. He's not the type to buy merch. Perhaps he's on a different emotional plane than his fan mentality, which is a fun thing to think about, but yes, he still owns the plushie of Endeavor, because of course he would be. He's still a fan of Endeavor and would still want to keep it close because it provided him comfort, so I'm glad that he still has it. And now we have the hottest hitting question about Dabi, and it's that, does Dabi like hot or cold soba? Cold soba. Whatever's not hot. Oh, that is stupidly funny and hilarious, yet ironic, that he will burn himself to a crisp, but he can't handle hot food, so he eats everything cold. Never change, Toya. Never change. But speaking on someone that does change, the next question is, Toga is always wearing a sailor suit, but does she own any other cute clothing? And Horikoshi responds with, she has several sailor outfits actually. So we're just saying the quiet part out loud. He's basically saying like, yeah, I drew her in the exact same outfit, but it's because she likes it, I promise. Not because I didn't want to draw her in multiple different outfits. But to carry on, but she does buy regular clothes she takes a liking to. She throws them away after, out of habit, so people can't track her. However, she just really likes the sailor outfit look though, so it works for her. I mean, yeah, very simple. Talking about more of her like more mundane aspects of her running from the law and showing what she likes and what she can't really have because she was a villain. So I'm glad that that was brought up. And tying more into the villains, we do have a question talking about who else in the League of Villains plays video games like Shigaraki and Spinner. And Horikoshi responds with, only Spinner plays, the rest just chat or play poker or something. And this is kind of funny because it kind of just shows how they hang out with one another, but really shows why Spinner connected with Shigaraki the most, because Shigaraki liked to play games or use gaming lingo, so that's fun to see. And speaking of fun sights, we have a question about in the last chapter, Aizawa's hair is short. Is there a reason for that? And Horikoshi responds with, Aizawa thinks cutting his hair is a waste of time, bars, so he grows it out. He only cuts his hair once every few years. Coincidentally, that just happened to be one of those times. So yeah, that's actually very cool that he likes to like cut his hair at certain intervals of time, and that this was the time that he decided to cut his hair. So it was just coincidence, which is cool. But what isn't a coincidence is that in the last chapter, Ashido's horns seem to have grown. How much do they usually grow in a year? And Horikoshi responds with, the growth may depend on how her quirk develops. Perhaps it might be even longer in 5 years. So that's cool. It really just shows that when it comes to like her horns, that they just constantly grow the more that she grows as a person as well as in her quirk. So her ears, or should I say her horns, could grow even longer as time goes on. But that could imply that they may shorten when her quirk starts to degrade or gets weaker, perhaps. But now we're at the question that I want to talk about when it comes to Aoyama, and it's that did Aoyama transfer to another school after he dropped out of UA? And Horikoshi responds with, after he confessed and turned himself in to the authorities, he did enroll again. And we do get some more information about how even after all of that happened, he was still able to achieve his dream of being a hero by working as Hagakure's sidekick, which really ties into the question that we had previously with Hagakure. And I'm going to be frank about this. The next question is about Mineta, and it's, can you eat Mineta's Mogu Mogu balls? And Horikoshi responds with, they're not edible, you might die. So yeah, they're not grapes, they're just parts of his bodies. And I hate the fact that we were able to sneak in a can someone eat Mineta's balls joke in the fan databook. Good job, My Hero Academia fans. You disgust me. But nah, that's a fun joke. But now we're approaching towards the end of the questions with Sero, and someone asking, is there any particular reason why Sero has a beard in the 8-year time skip? And Horikoshi responds with, it's fashionable. He's into ethnic kind of vibes, and usually people who like that kind of fashion tend to have beards, I guess. And I think when it comes to ethnic, I think what he's most likely referring to is most likely a Western appeal, because a lot of people in the West, including myself, have beards, or more likely what this is referring to is facial hair, because Sero most definitely doesn't have a beard. And when it comes to the Japanese language, most likely referring to beards, facial hair, mustaches, all most likely have the same word, and they all have the same connotation, which is just facial hair, so there's no real distinction between them. But yeah, I think Sero looks nice with a mustache, probably even better with a full beard. So now we get to a very disappointing question, which is that did Sato-kun learn how to bake by reading recipes, or did someone teach him? And Horikoshi responds with, at first he started by reading recipes, but he began to add his own flair, making it original. I guess that's the usual case for most things. But yeah, very simple question, very short question. Take it with what. But now we're approaching the final 2 questions about Deku, which is that after the final page of the manga, does Deku continue working at UA as a teacher like the pros? And Horikoshi responds with, he continues his work as a teacher. He also goes to other facilities and schools around the country and sometimes does lectures. He has quite the busy life. So yes, he goes pro as a hero, but continues to be a teacher because you can do both, like most of the teachers at UA. So that's very straightforward. And the final question is, which character's story did you enjoy telling the most? And Horikoshi responds with, if we're talking about enjoying hardships and struggles, then probably Deku and Katsuki. The two of them felt that they were always walking a tightrope. If they made even the slightest mistake, everything would fall apart. Because of that tension, they were very rewarding to draw, and I'm glad I was able to do so. So yeah, very much enjoyed that. Love that with a passion. And that pretty much concludes the questions that we have for right now. Now, there may be a follow-up video to this because there was a lot of information in the data book, Ultra H, that I was unable to cover because it hasn't been translated into English, but just let this tide you for later because I may make another video, a part 2, covering more information that we'll learn later on. With all that, let me ask you this. What did you think of the information that we got from this final fan data? Did you like anything that was discussed? And if you did, what was your favorite part? Leave your thoughts down below. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in the next video. Goodbye! Also, this is Tomoru Shigaraki's actual quirk that All For One took from him. I can't believe that he just dropped this out of nowhere. Goodbye.